these investors.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Saturday morning show. We are going to be talking about landlord profit boost this morning and look at some smart and smooth financial management for your buy-to-let. Jim, you're joining us this morning from sunny Blair Athol.
Well, overcast.
Overcast
and cold. I've got my heater. I can't believe I was here a month ago and it was boiling and I never need my heater and now I need my heater. Thank God for electricity and hard standing stuff because I'll be chittering by now.
It does, but the temperature drops though, but it looks nice. And you out on the bike today?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to get on the bike. It's like on and off with the weather, eh?
Yeah. So yeah, topic today, we're going to talk about landlord profit boosts, Jim. And there's a wee saying I put at the start of here, and it's funny because we spoke about this the other day, and it's look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. But you kind of disagreed with that, just because
absolutely. And by the way, I've never told you I bought another 2 properties yesterday.
Oh, did you? And is it the one that maybe we were talking about the other week? Did you do that?
Possibly, aye. I maybe sent you information for that. Yeah, I've agreed. I've agreed to buy them. Good price, I tell you.
As long as it's only 2.
No, I'll be buying a lot more. You know that anyway.
But no, right now. we're still working on the other lot. Anyway, so yeah, so why do you not agree with that saying, Jim? Just to recap, I know we spoke about it through the week. So
I think it gets you into a broke mentality. You start focusing on the micro, and you don't see the bigger picture. So you're too detailed. You know this thing about I could save £500. Aye, but if you could make £5,000 with the same time that you're trying to save £500, just go and make the £5,000 and take the hit for the 500 quid.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense at all. This is why when you get to a stage and you possibly get to be a bigger landlord, then you have to learn just to say no. Because I have a lot of investors or potential investors coming to me saying, "Can I sit down and have a coffee?" And it's like you can't get me 1-to-1. It's like no chance. That time is so valuable to me. So this is why we do to the many on shows like this. This is the whole point of these shows. It's 1-to-many rather than 1-to-1 because I just can't. I've not got enough hours in the day to do 1-to-1.
Yeah. I, on the other hand, do sit down with investors. I've got 3 investors meetings next week with new investors.
But then that's why I refer them to you because you've got the time to do that and you know what I know anyway because I teach you. And if there's anything you didn't know, you just ask me anyway.
Yeah, so it's a good way to work it because you are so busy and your time is better spent doing other things. But talking about that penny pinching, you could be conscious with your saving, but you could penny pinch where it could actually hold you back and deter you for what you really should be doing. So it is an old saying, but as I say, keep an eye on your day-to-day finances of your rental property. It can pay huge dividends if you're quite savvy. But we're not talking about being cheap here. So we need to be clear about that, especially when you're in buy-to-let and looking after tenants and property things. And that's from maybe buying a new fridge freezer or replacing a shower head, even choosing your letting agent. Going for quality will reward you for years with the reliable service and the reliableness of higher quality goods and things as well. So that is always something to think of. But you could also be savvy with your money around costs and income and planning for unexpected things when you put some time and thought into what you actually do. And things we're going to cover this morning are removing those financial shocks, making smart repairs and replacements, reviewing your regular outgoings and sit down and do that, increasing your income and claiming every allowable expense that you can and making sure you get the full benefit of doing that.
This is where I think we probably get the expertise in the fact that I was a former accountant.
Yeah.
So it's a great combination to have a property investor who's still active and has been in it for so long, for over 30 years, and then also to be an accountant as well and understand exactly what you should be doing in terms of the investment return and what you're allowable as deductions and what you can do to make you more tax efficient in terms of your portfolio. I still can't get over when I look on a lot of the landlord forums and investor forums, how people have still got their structures wrong. You know, the way they work it, and I could see them losing quite a lot of potential money if they'd just structured themselves right in the first place, they could have capitalised on that and actually kept more money to themselves to reinvest in their business. Remember, being a landlord isn't about raking in money and spending it straight away. Being a landlord is about long-term investment strategies, and having that cash flow and that money just as a fallback in case anything happens. For me, it is anyway. So it's if you ever lost your job, or your ability or your income based on your ability to perform was lost as well, because maybe you couldn't walk anymore, maybe you underwent a serious brain injury or something like that, but the money would still be coming in regardless. For me, that's the peace of mind it gives me. It's not the money itself, it's what the money can do. That's what's so important about your investment strategies. And it's kind of like with people with pensions or with critical illness. They're putting money into something, but they're putting, I suppose, critical illness is you're putting money into it with the premise that you might it might happen, but the reality is that money it's going into it really is just lost, because you're not actually putting it in to get it later on or it to compound over a period of time. You're just it just disappears to the insurance company. Whereas if you do it with buy to let and you structure it correctly, then you've got an investment portfolio that's going to build and going to be there if you ever need it and need to cash it in, if that's the case.
And the equity and things as they are held in your assets.
The equity is everything, because I reckon in 5 years' time, my portfolio have grown just through the equity improvement and also the improvement of the stock, because I'm reinvesting and improving the stock of the landlords that I've bought from, because they've basically run it down since the day they bought it. That's what happens. They don't have they've geared wrong, they're structured wrongly, their loan to value is far too high. The cash flow is never coming in, so they're never able to reinvest back into the property. Therefore, they're never able to do any improvements over the period of time, which will increase the value of the property. I mean, the two that I've bought, I've agreed to buy. One of them has never changed in value since 2006.
Yeah,
it's never gone up, and it's like, what? You're having a laugh. That is almost an impossibility. How's that possible? But that's what's happened. But for me personally, the numbers work and the cash flow's coming in, so I couldn't care less if it didn't go up over the next 20 years. It makes no difference to me. It's the money it comes in, it will generate the wealth. It will be able to reinvest and compound over time to make even more money. So it's like growing a tree, and then instead of actually reaping the harvest from the tree and eating the fruit, you take all the seeds and replant them again to grow more trees. And then the next set of trees grow, and you maybe take off a couple of bits of fruit and have them, eat something. But then you take the seeds again and you plant the majority of trees again. Some of these trees won't work out, therefore they'll never grow, but a lot of them do. And when they do, they'll reap even more of a harvest. And you just keep doing that and doing that and doing that, and compound wealth. And over a period of time, it's like then your money goes from, maybe you're making 10,000 extra 1 year to 20,000 to 40,000 to 80,000 to 160,000 to 320,000 to 640,000 to 1.2 million.
Yeah, and see how that compounds up. Yeah, and that's a really good analogy as well. And I think is really if you're going to listen to what we are covering today and really be on the case and be savvy, you can really unlock thousands and extra profit, and you could then reinvest that in the business, which is your buy to let. Use some for leisure. So yeah, we're really going to dive into that today and have a good look at
I unlocked recently, I think I unlocked about 1.2 million. Just and I was like, what?
And what's strange, Jim, as well, and obviously you are quite savvy with your numbers and you keep track of things, but even you were kind of surprised about that initially when you actually looked at it and thought, is that right? But it was, yeah.
No, that's when I retired. But I'm talking about 1.2 million just last year or the year before. I was like, I'll be honest and just say I never did anything for that, really. What I did do was the best strategy anybody should do to compound wealth is actually don't touch it. Just leave it in and let it grow. Let it grow. Delayed gratification, farmer mentality. That's what you need to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've done a whole show on delayed gratification in the Wealth Creation Show series, and that's quite a really handy playlist, if you're buy-to-let investment and things, listen to that. It's quite good. We're talking about using your ambition to turning your ambition into income on Monday, so that's a good one. So tune into that. But we're going to start off. First topic today is removing those financial shocks. And when somebody really, when something breaks down, or it's usually at the worst time. Do you know, as a landlord and things, people will know you'll get caught out with things at the worst time. Call out charges, parts, labour, and they're rarely cheap now. I mean, labour's one of the most expensive things I see coming through on quotes and things now as well.
Because of the tax hikes.
Yeah, but there are ways to avoid.
Yeah, you didn't get that. You're not be watching the general election debates then. It's all right.
No.
That's wasted, that one. That's wasted. I should have been a comedian.
But yeah, so there are ways to avoid, obviously, instances like that, blowing a hole in your pot or your savings that you've got. So let's take a wee look at them. So obviously, some people do say about taking out a boiler servicing and repairing policy. I'm not always a fan, but it could be right for you. If you're buying new and you're putting new boilers and things in, always get a warranty. Jim, we always do the ideal logics with a 10-year warranty.
We always get a warranty, but the difficulty about always getting the warranty is really, it's not really worth the paper it's written on, because the reality is your business is based on a service level, and when Ideal Boilers, when you contact them for anything, or any boiler company that's got a warranty, they say, all right, we'll be out in a couple of days, and it's like, wait a minute, the tenant's not got any heating, they've not got any hot water, and we've not got anything for them at all. So I really need somebody to come out right now, this minute, under an emergency situation. And it's like, well, we can't. And it's like, so you just have to go and get it fixed anyway. So I don't take out. Richard, I don't take out. You'll know that I'm self-insured. But this is all about working out how many times it's actually going to happen, to how many times it's going to cost you when it happens.
Yeah.
So, for example, for me, over my portfolio, insurance is a classic example for me. Somebody was asking me the other night, I shared a post from 2010 where the house was completely destroyed, and I shared all the photographs from 2010 last night. Yeah, well, so that gives you an idea. And somebody went, well, were you not insured for that? And I went, do you know the insurance would cost an extra, probably about, I don't know, £10,000–15,000 a year for my portfolio to do that? And I may as well, I'm self-insured. Because the reality of that happening, 2 or 3 times throughout the year, it's probably, and the reality of that happening even once a year is pretty remote. But when it happens, it happens. But I'm saving £15,000 a year, therefore that's going into that sort of bank. 15,000. So if it happens in year 3, I've got 45,000 for it. If it cost me 20 grand to sort it, then I'm still up £25,000 in terms of saving on my insurance. I got this from Woolworths, because Woolworths, the shop Woolworths, they owned all the shops at the time, or the lease of the shops anyway, and their insurance, they became self-insured. So Woolworths said when anything happens, because their insurance was so high, they would just be self-insured, and they would just sort it themselves out their own pocket, and it worked very, very well for them.
Yeah, because when you think about all their stores and the likelihood of things going wrong and them needing to use insurance, do you know what I mean? It'll be few and far between.
I take another 2,000 or 3,000 off for £1,000 excess. So it's only if the house burns down I would ever claim on the insurance, or it's completely destroyed by the tenant. It has to be destroyed. It can't be just normal living. Because we've had that recently. We had one where somebody kicked the door in and then destroyed the house. That was insured and covered. We had one where the tenant had left after about 5 years in the property, and it was completely destroyed like the other one. But because it was the tenant living like that, the insurance company went no.
Yeah. So I mean, there is benefits on each side, but you're absolutely right. Also with warranties and things, I mean, people new kitchens and things that people are putting in, they might have integrated appliances, and whether you choose to include appliances and things, then you can get warranties on them as well, and get warranties on kitchen appliances up to about 8 years or so. That's something you might want to do to keep the breakdown cover and things on them if you're going to include appliances as well. Also with your landlord insurance. It's
a lot to do with Richard as well. But I was looking over it and removing financial shocks. it's a lot to do with the person's attitude towards risk, and what the likelihood is that, and whether they can take that shock of something breaking, and they're having to pay money out of their own pocket. This is generally people that have just put themselves right to the edge in terms of loan to value, in terms of cash flow every single month, and they can't take that risk. Anything could happen. But I'll be honest, it's like, you probably shouldn't be a landlord, and you've invested in the wrong strategy if that's the case, because if you don't get your numbers right in the beginning, you're going to fall foul of this at some point in time, and I'll guarantee you'll end up selling up and saying this would never work, and being a landlord's no possible in it. It'll not make any money, and you'll go and tell everybody else and put all them off and steal their dream. But the reality is, you're just a shite investor. Let's be honest.
It's nice language for a Saturday morning. Anyway,
I know, but there's no other way I could say that, and I think, and the way I could say it, because it's just you should be talking to the right people before you start.
Yeah. And to be fair, if you're in this and you really want to have that frank and quite direct feedback, and that's exactly what you're giving, Jim. So I totally agree. With landlord's insurance, Jim, how do you feel about obviously having this 24/7 emergency, like plumbing and drains and things included in that? Is it something you would use? I think we've lost him. We've lost him, but his connection will come back. So yeah, you can have that incorporated into your landlord's insurance. So you could have like the 24-hour cover, which covers your drains and your plumbing and things as well, which you could include with your landlord's insurance. But again, it will come with an excess and things on top of that. So while you can never really predict when maybe say a washing machine or your heating system's going to fail, there are a few precautionary measures that you can have and put them in place, and that could really help minimize that hassle and that pain, because a lot of people do look at it as quite painful when they receive that call about maybe a boiler or your appliance in the kitchen. Washing machines are quite a common one, and it's costly. So if you could incorporate that into your insurance policy or have warranties and things in place, it might prevent you from having to go through that pain and cost and eating into your pot and your savings as well. That also brings us quite nicely onto making smart repairs and replacements. So making smart repairs and replacements, and we must have lost you there, Jim, but making smart repairs and replacements, keeping your property looking fresh and up to date will really protect and improve its rental value. But before you embark on really big renovation projects and things, look at how much work really needs to be done and how much is necessary to be done, and how much that's going to cost you. So for cost cutting to be sustainable, here are some of my kind of money saving and future thinking examples to consider. So things like your kitchen. Think about the kitchen, and the bottom half of the kitchen really gets a lot more wear and tear than the top half, especially if you've got children, if you've got pets and things as well in the property. So think about the wear and tear. You may only need to replace the worktops and the lower doors, perhaps maybe creating that two-tone look or something. So think about that, and think about the cost saving aspect to that. That could obviously really, rather than taking the whole thing out and having to replace it all. And that's really something that maybe people don't have in their mindset or their thought process. But if you speak to the right people, they do, i.e. an agent or somebody that's experienced in buy-to-let investment and doing renovations and refurbs and things as well. You back with us, Jim?
Yeah, this is Vodafone. It's pathetic. It's supposed to have unlimited data, and Vodafone have let me down, and it cut it off last night. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I could hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
So we've just moved on to making smart repairs and replacements and things. And I just think of that kind of thought process of save yourself money and doing the necessary repairs rather than, ripping everything out and starting again when you don't need to. Thinking about we're just maybe on like replacing maybe tiles, and check whether maybe simply regrouting. I was actually dealing with this the other day. I had floor tiles and a refurb board down, and rather than lift the whole floor, I'm just having them regrouted. And so check whether tiles maybe simply need regrouted rather than taking them all out. And it really will.
This is where I argue as well about, laminate flooring, especially if your laminate flooring is a bit worse for wear, but the flooring's really good still. and it's a solid base, rather than ripping all the laminate flooring up. We did it in 163, remember, all these
Yeah.
years ago,
Put
and
the
we ended
carpet
up
on
just
top.
putting a carpet right on top of the laminate floor. So the laminate floor is
It's a good base.
is a perfect base. Yeah, a perfect base. It just means if there's anything under, you need to get under the floorboards. You'll need to rip everything up, but that's never ever happened for us, is it?
Mhm.
So all that time we've had that, it's never ever happened. So it makes absolute sense for me. And in the same way, if you've got the tiled flooring, as you said, in
Yeah.
a bathroom, you could either grout it, or if you've got a couple of cracked tiles and it doesn't look great, but it's actually got a good solid base and it's smooth, then just put a good lino on top of it.
Yeah.
And because then if you rip all the tiles off, then you've probably got the wrong base. Therefore, you're going to have to put a new base on to get the line on top of it, or new tiles on top of it. So it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more money. So my thing to that is definitely just think about putting the lino
Well,
right on top of it, and then seal it around the edges.
yeah, that was my first. That was my first thought. And the carpet fitters went out, and they said for whatever, obviously they went through it. They can't put the vinyl on top, and they would need the tiles would need to come up. The floor underneath would come up. Another base would have to be put down. New tiles. So it was quite costly. And I nipped out and had a quick look at it. And I says, look, that could just get regrouted and cleaned up.
I noticed Ryan C had actually said, if you're self-insured, can it be used against writing off a tax? Well, if the house was destroyed and needed repaired, absolutely. So if you're self-insured and
Yeah,
the
of course
house
I will,
needs
yeah.
completely repaired, just like a house needs completely refurbished if a tenant trashes it, then it's all completely writable off against tax straight away against your profit. And you can carry that loss forward if you're obviously not making enough money to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win situation, really. The only way improvements can't be written off against tax if they're improvements, but it's very fine line now. It's most anything you do mostly to your property now, even if it's a big expense, is writable off. I mean, I thought I actually had a conversation with my accountant because yes, I do have an accountant that does all my work for me.
Yeah.
I'm no daft. I want to be an investor, no a landlord. I don't want to do work anymore. I've done it for the last 30 years. So the key here is I asked my accountant, is that possible to write that off, or I should have capitalised it? Because in my opinion, I should capitalise it when I did recently. And he went, no, it's arguable it could be written off, so just write it off. And I'm like, what? It's about 70 grand. And he went, no, you can write it off. And I went, okay. And it worked. So it just carried anything forward. If there was a loss, just carried it forward and you could write it off straight away. Because the great thing about that is then, if you're going to keep this for life and pass it on to your next generation and you're never going to sell the property, you're able to write that money off straight away because you'll never ever get it back, because it won't be written off against capital gains tax either, because you'll never ever sell it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, definitely. And tax is a funny one, but obviously, and if you have a proper accounting and things in place, I mean, you can do it on your own, and we'll talk about that when we review your regular expenses and things. But just to finish off about smart repairs and replacements things, also, if you're doing redecoration and things, you look at higher quality, maybe washable, wipe down paint. It'll last a lot longer, especially if you've got families and things in there. Pick a kind of neutral on trend but still timeless colour. Do you know, white or light grey is really in just now. Something, or maybe something that shows a wee bit of fewer marks. And
I was a total cheapo when it came down to it. When I first started, it was all about the most basic things you can get. And then I realised over time, things like the opacity of the paint, in other words, how many coats you need to put on for it to look good. The cheap stuff, you were taking 5 coats, even to cover something up, like maybe a blue paint that was there before. It was taking 5 coats, whereas the good paint, the high quality paint, which a wee bit more it cost, but it only took 2 coats to cover it. So therefore, you're saving the labour for people doing it for another 3 times. So actually, it was cost effective to do it. So it made absolute sense. So don't try and go cheap as chips. Just learn the lesson from me. It's no great. You invest in. It's just the same with things like running shoes and running gear and mountain bikes and stuff like that as well. To give an analogy, it's like, don't get the cheapest rubbish going, because you'll end up in the long run, medium to long run, it being worse off.
Yeah, and I think and it's not to say go out and spend a lot of money on the high quality stuff. There's lots of really good mid-range things, and every aspect, whether it's appliances or if it's materials and things as well. So, and finally as well, before you go to start making obviously those improvements and repairs and things, check about, like, there's always some schemes and things that are in place. Jim, you sent me over, well, we're looking at the things the other day about they're bringing back in some sort of boiler and heating scheme as well for certain individuals. And there's also, you know, this air source heat pump grants and things as well. So there's a lot of things out there. So do your research, speak to people if you're not too sure. Speak to the right people who can maybe point you in the direction where you can maybe get some assistance to maybe upgrade your energy efficiency, your property, boiler, air pumps, and all the rest of it. So you've always got those kind of options there. Now, we're now going to move on next to reviewing your regular expenses. Now, whether that's your mortgage, your insurance, your utility bills, switching for better deals, whether you could save thousands of pounds over the lifetime of your investment, it's really worthwhile looking into what alternative insurance policies and things are available, switching your mortgage and things quite regularly if the rate's better. Those savings could really go towards upgrades and add more value to your rental property value in terms of the equity locked in that. So keep a watchful eye on costs, and we're going to run through some of them just now. But firstly, we're going to...
With your mortgages, let me just cover this, Richard, because this is really important. With your mortgages, there's a good one. Even though your mortgage is not due for renewal yet, look at your redemption value and just check how much that is if you redeemed it early, and check how much the mortgage rates are now, and check where the mortgage rates are expected to be after that. And then if you could work out the difference, then you could probably plan ahead, especially if you realise that mortgage rates are going up. Otherwise, you know, the flip side of that is you realise that mortgage rates are going down. So refixing your mortgage rates offers long-term stability, which is what I do. You know, I'm quite happy at 5-year fixed rate deals, but now there's one at 5-year fixed rate and there's one at 2-year fixed rate, and I've just worked it out. This is the two I'm buying. I've been offered from Aldermore. I'm actually working out, I think interest rates are going to come down over the next couple of years to a more stable level, and therefore, and then I worked out how much the 6% and how much the 5% would be, the 1% differential over the extra 3 years it would cost me, and then I worked out what the arrangement fee would cost me. Now, the arrangement fee, the good thing about the arrangement fee on the 2-year, I've not got any arrangement fee on the 5-year. Clearly, they're obviously trying to divert me to the 5-year. That's why they're not putting an arrangement fee on it, because they're wanting me on the 5-year, because they know mortgage rates are going to come down as well. So they don't want me to do that. But I even realised that the 3,000 on the 2-year fixed rate deal is actually instantly deductible, because it's to do with finance. It's not to do with the capital value of the property. So that could be instantly deductible. So really, to me, that's 80% of that value, because it's corporation tax. It's a limited company. So it's only going to cost me 2,400, is it? Yeah, 2,400 in real terms, because I can get that as a deduction in my regular expenses. So is the extra 1% over the next 3 years or the next 5 years going to cost me a lot more than that? And the answer to that is yes. So therefore, I'm going to go for the 2-year fixed rate deal as a result, even though the arrangement fee is on there and it's going to cost me a wee bit more money to do it. But it's not coming out of my pocket. It gets added to the value of the mortgage. So it makes no difference.
People that don't have that kind of knowledge or insight or able to look at it like that would probably instantly go, oh, I'll fix for 5 years at the lower rate without the initial.
The bank's no daft. This is what the bank does. They deliberately engineer it so it looks more attractive. So people go, I like the 6% at 5 years, because and that's fine if it works for you and it's stability. But for me, I just take a different approach to it. So refixing your mortgage rates often it does offer that stability, but look out for the high arrangement fees, but work it out how much the difference is between doing it and not doing it, because that's the opportunity cost or the opportunity gain potentially. So you need to work out if it's a cost or a gain, and in most instances it ends up being a cost to do that. The lower value loan deals, you can find lenders who charge nothing sometimes. Buildings insurance is actually shot up as well. So shop around for before renewing your policy. Now there's a fantastic insurer which we use anyway, Total Landlord Insurance, which is Alan Boswell, and I got a fantastic deal off of them. I was using who was I using before? Anyway, the company I was using before, I thought, yeah, nobody's going to beat them. And then I went back to Alan Boswell, and Alan Boswell took a third off my insurance. And it's like, wow. And it wasn't because they were trying to get my business. It was because that was the rates. And I never realised that. A third insurance to me is a lot of money. It's about 5,000 quid in terms of that. So buildings insurance, check that definitely. Shop around. Make sure you've got the right cover. Make sure you've got cover if anybody's on universal credit. So if they're working and they end up going to universal credit, make sure they've got the cover, because you're screwed if they don't. If anything happens to your property. We had it once before where the guy insisted. And at the time when I signed him up as a landlord, I said to him categorically, does your insurance cover DSS at that time? Because it was DSS housing benefit.
Yeah.
He went, yeah, it covers everything. I think it was the Farmers Union, National Farmers Union insurance policies, the NFU, or something like that, mutual. So he insisted, and yet we had a claim. It was about 20 to 30,000 pounds, and it wasn't granted because of that. It took him 2 years to fight that, and a fortune in legal costs. It wasn't worth it. So you're better just going with the right insurer in the first instance. A lot of the big insurers like Alan Boswell and Hamilton Fraser, that was at HFIS Solutions. They cover. So if you're not in with any of these two, you should really be going for one of these two, because they're the ones that cover all the landlords. But Alan Boswell at this point in time, Total Landlord Insurance, we can actually give an introduction to that. Yes, we do get 25% of their money, but that 25% we get, they're going to get anyway. We get 25% of what they get. We don't get, there's no an add-on or anything. We then just put that to charity. So that's how we do it. So the more referrals we get, the more money we give to charity. So here's another one as well. If you own an HMO, review your utilities annually for the cheapest provider that year. And you can also minimize your water bill by fitting flow restrictors to all the taps and toilets if you're having to pay water rates as well. Some people in Scotland get away with it because they're doing it in a different way. Some landlords actually have meters in the room, so the tenants actually contribute towards the cost based on the number of units they're using. So they'll have a monitor for meter, and they read that all, and then they split the bill between everybody rather than actually taking that risk and absorbing that risk at the fact of utilities. I mean, imagine all the HMOs that had that commitment, and then that happened with the utility bills in the last couple of years. It's like, oh my God, how did they actually survive?
I don't know how they read that storm, because that would have been quite difficult,
Plus the fact, I just get the impression if you're giving somebody away the utilities as part of the bill, they'll probably just put the heating on and leave it on forever.
Leave the heating running, leave the TVs on,
They've not got any. There's no incentive for them to switch anything off. So I think that's or you maybe have a fair use in your agreement. Where it's fair use, and if it goes beyond that, then they'll have to contribute towards that. So most research can be done online to do this. There's no doubt about that. But it's worth chatting with an independent broker, which is, we can make the introduction to Alan Boswell, and also Kesa Salimia does mortgages and for the insurance as well. And they can probably have access to better deals and comparison sites. See, once I've got a system that works, it's very rare I'll actually change it. There's people that come in and every single year to me and say, "Oh, I could save you a few pounds," and it's like, I could save you. To them, they say I could save you £500 a year, and I'm like, okay, to me, saving £500 a year is not something that's going to excite me. It's because you're asking me to change. And it needs my efforts to do that, and that's more than £500 a year. So it'll cost me more to actually change in the first instance. Here's a good one. I'm actually going through SAS again, so the SAS pensions. I'm speaking to Kevin sometime in the next couple of weeks, Kevin Whelan, about changing my pension to a SAS pension, because I want to invest in my companies now and invest in my properties and use that money I've got in that pension, and also pool the family's money together and use that as well. But I still don't know. I did say when we speak, you're going to have to tell me how much time this is going to take in my time to do this, because if it takes more of my time, then I ain't doing it. There's no point in me doing it if I've got to be an administrator and I've got to look after it, and it's not done for, we call. So I need somebody that'll do it done for rather than do it myself.
Rather than it become kind of incumbent on your time.
Yeah, it does. It's like, and then people, then I become an administrator. I might as well go back and work in an office and push paper.
Yeah.
Because effectively that's basically somebody at 20 quid an hour. It's like I'm the one to save 20 quid an hour. I'm want to save 500 quid an hour.
Yeah, I was just going to say £100 an hour. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about obviously increasing your income, and we've spoke about all these kind of money saving tips and ways for cost cutting. But it's not the only way really to boost your profits, and there are multiple ways to increase a property's rental value. And firstly, obviously, thanks to the SMP, reviewing your rent annually to keep in line with the market, while offering, obviously, you could do like loyalty discounts and things as well. But I mean, this is something that's part of kind of the legislation now. We need to do annual rent increases, and it's been set out by the government now, and that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Patrick Harvey of the Greens, for making it so easy for us to put our rents up every single year and every single tenant to fall in line for that. If you had kept your mouth shut and didn't put rent controls in, rents would be a lot less than they are now. Incidentally, yesterday I did quite an important exercise. I had Green Gates came up. In 2016, Green Gates came up as a rental at £525 a month. Now, I'm charging £583 today, which is an 11% increase over that period of time. Inflation went up 31% in that period.
Yeah.
So I've increased my rents by 11%. Inflation's gone up by 31%. Oh, so I'm making a fortune out of property and I'm taking advantage of tenants. I don't think so.
No, and one of the things,
believe it or not, that Richard, that would be actually less. I wouldn't have put them up because that actually, the 11% actually accounts the fact that I put them up because Patrick Harvey basically said you could put your rents up, and I went, okay, I'll put them up with a tenant in situ. So that rent would have been even less. So the tenant would have been saving themselves even more money. But because of Patrick Harvey, the so-called minister for tenants, really probably a minister for landlords at the end of the day, because he's given us the opportunity to do that, and he's taught everybody else to fall in line.
Yeah, and then also as well, you could offer loyalty discounts and things, or maybe excellent and long-term tenants to minimise the changeovers. And
I've done that.
And I've just got, that's what I was going to say, and that's something that you've exercised over the years, Jim.
So I've done that with people who I think, oh, there's maybe, I'm not really sure about the person when I reference them, but I think they're a good tenant. So I actually maximise the rent as much as I can. And then what I say to them is every 6 months, I'll give you a discount every month for paying your rent on time, for looking after the property, because we do inspections, and for not being antisocial. This is another mechanism. So these are the 3 criteria I insist every single time. If any one of these are broken, then we've got a problem. But these are the 3. No damage to the property, pay your rent on time, and don't be antisocial to your neighbours. If these 3 criteria tick, we're okay. You're with me for life if you want. So then what I do is that I'm incentivise them by saying before your summer holidays, I'll then release that 6 months discount to you, that rebate, and I'll give you that back. And then before Christmas, I'll release that other 6 months discount or rebate back to you as well. So they've got something for their summer and they've got something for their Christmas as well, just before then. And that keeps everything sweet, and it gives them a kind of a savings plan as well at the same time.
Definitely, it gives them that bit, and it's a really good incentive for them, and it builds up good relationships between tenants and landlords and things as well. You could also look at exploring how to maximise the property, possibly by adding an extra bedroom, converting a loft or a garage space, creating that extra space by maybe combining the kitchen and the lounge into one big open plan space, and then having an extra bedroom. Possibly you could do an extension on things, but obviously then you're entering the realms of quite an expensive addition. So obviously keep an eye on your numbers there. But these are all ways to obviously add to the property and increase your income. So there are things you could think about as well. Going up market with specifications and upgrades and luxury finishes, be careful of that. Like we spoke about, you stick to the kind of really good mid-range stuff, but injecting interior design touches and things that really elevate the experience of light. We talk about light a lot, and selling and renting property, and the way it makes it could make the property feel to the people that are going to be living in it, and also the function and style of property and how that's going to be received by potential viewers and people that are going to be renting the property. It will make them feel it a home and picture themselves there for a longer period of time. So these are all things that will, in the long run, be beneficial and profitable to you as a landlord with a buy-to-let, or an investor, should I say, with your buy-to-let portfolio.
It's interesting that you see the exploding ways to add new bedrooms, because I've done that previously. So I've added new bedrooms, subdivided a big living room, dining room, just put a stud partition and a door opening, and therefore you've got a bedroom off the back of the living room. There's also, I've seen landlords as well take the kitchens and use the kitchens as the bedroom, and then they've put the kitchen into the living room off the back, because the living room was big enough. So that's another way of doing it as well. Converting lofts, kind of sounds a bit too much money, or garages as well. Oh, if it's off the hall, there's a strong possibility that could be done. You know, integrated garages, you just create a door off the hallway and you can go into there. You need to strap and board and line it. You'll also need planning permission to do that, by the way. But sneakily, I think some people have actually done it without the planning permission and no bother actually asking for it. So these are all different things you could do. You're right about going up market and specification upgrades, luxury finishes, but it depends what market you're actually dealing with, doesn't it?
Think about your target audience and think about your numbers and your spend. As I say, you're probably the sensible thing to do is keep to the good quality mid-range stuff, and don't go too overboard.
It reminds me,
fit for purpose and functional.
It reminds me of somebody, and actually, I'll not say where they are because they might be tuning in at some point in time, but in the East Nook somewhere. I went round to see them, and I told them the value of the house. They said, well, if I do all these upgrades, would I be able to add that value? And I went, you'll never get that back. And I checked with the surveyor as well, and he says, you'll never get that back either. He says, you're doing far too much to it, and it's not really adding that significant value to it. But she's gone and done it, and everybody's gone, oh, it's fantastic. And one of these Instagram moment things.
I mean, it'll look the part.
And she's got loves, likes, loves, so much affirmation on social media that probably that's what the main desire was in the first place, to do that and just got the likes. But I tell you what, it's cost her about £300,000 to do it. That's how much it's cost. It's mental. It's like why you would do that is beyond belief. But she's got this total project in her head about and delusional about where she would be with this, and she'll never ever get her money back. It'll be 20 years before she ever sees that, and then she'll probably just get out with her money back from the beginning. What she's going to do with it from there, I do not know, because she'll not be able to sell it and get anything back now. And I don't think she's even going to holiday let it. I think it's just she's just wasting her money.
It does sound like she's ploughing a lot of money in unnecessarily. So, but then
this brings us then on the claiming allowable expenses. Then
I was just going to say, you want to talk us through claiming allowable expenses.
Minimum, God, tax is the one thing. See, when you get to a point where you think, oh, I've got so much money coming in, I'll never ever run out, and because I'm no spending as much. So the key, the name of the game is to spend less than you make, which is what a lot of people find that is a challenge. But once you get that, and you've always got the money coming in, you've always got your wealth growing as a result of that. The name of the game now is actually to minimise your tax bill as much as possible, as a part of boosting your profit overall. From knowing what you can claim to keep your receipts, even for the smallest expense for someone, and it does all add up. But you can make it so easy for yourself. The key here is when you buy everything, buy it on a card. It's like this carry on that's going on around the internet about cash is king and how important it is. It's like cash, for every £100 you put in the bank of cash, you have to pay about £1 for every £100 you bank. Plus the fact that your safety is compromised because you're holding a lot of cash in your shop as a result. And the convenience of you having to get out your chair, tally it all up again, write it all down, and then walk down to a bank, which is no longer existent, is impossible. So, and the cost of the labour involved in doing all that and handling cash is probably more than actually just using cards, especially when it comes to spending. So when you invest in your properties, me personally, I'd be using my bank card, and the transactions would be going through, I'd be getting my receipt for it, and I could match it up against my bank. So I've always got a record of where it's spent, rather than actually having to say it, oh, at one point I spent cash, and actually keeping another separate spreadsheet for your cash and your cash purchases and cash expenses. It's a false economy, definitely. So just pay by card, pay by debit card, pay by credit card, whatever you want. Debit card's probably best, because then you're trying to tally and reconcile all the time for your credit cards to get it all to go through in your accounts properly. Here's the one. Check the HMRC website for allowable expenses to ensure you're up to date. I'll be honest, the HMRC website is rubbish. It is. It doesn't. It tries to tell you there's non-allowable expenses for improvements, and that's where they fall short, because the information they're telling you on that website is now almost outdated.
I was just going to say it's outdated.
Yeah, and even the people actually teaching you at the online seminars for HMRC are actually telling you the wrong information on occasions. And I'm thinking, where are they getting these people? But and it's what it is I think it's just frontline people. I don't think it's actually accountants that's actually doing it. And I think they're just reading from a script, and somebody's provided them with a script which is outdated, or they've done this recording once and they're just running it every single time on the same seminars. Every single time and time again, and they're giving outdated information now. So I would genuinely speak to an accountant about it, rather than actually speaking to an HMRC person about what you can claim. Because remember, what you can claim is a matter of debate within the letter of the law. That's the reason the law's there, but the law is there to be interpreted how you can argue it should be interpreted. So in other words, I'll give you a prime example here. How could a horse be a bird in law? But it was a famous court case where a horse was deemed to be a bird, because and I don't know what the theory was behind it, but this was the argument, because they didn't want to have the thing deemed to be a horse because it made them have to pay more duty or spend more money or whatever it was. Yeah, but they famously argued that because because a bird has feathers on its back, and the horse had a saddle on its back made of feathers, they argued successfully that the horse would be deemed to be a bird.
That's crazy.
And they had to grant it. They had to grant it. That was mental.
Yeah. That's mental,
so that's how I would say, make sure you get the right advice and you speak to the right people before you do anything, in terms of if you've not got that knowledge and expertise. So these are all things that you've got, and things like we used to have the wear and tear allowance, which was 10% of your top line income, is now wiped out, and it's just replacement allowance now. Yeah, used to have a choice. It was one of that, but then they took it away because they realised people like me was getting a fortune off. You know, I was getting £20,000 allowances and tax allowances because I was doing furnished properties, but I wasn't really providing that much furniture anymore, because it had all been bought in the beginning. It had all been bought in the beginning, and I was able to do it every single year with the same stuff. So I was getting a huge amount of tax reduction in my bill. So there was no doubt, I thought at one point in time they're going to just take this away, because all landlords were cotton onto this. It was a great avenue to get tax relief. So there is mechanisms out there to get it. Even as well as stuff like take advantage of your £1,000 interest on your bank interest. Yeah. So if very few people have got enough money to put in cash to make the £1,000, but you get a personal savings allowance of £1,000 interest every year before you're actually charged tax on your interest that you earn. So do you need ISAs anymore? No, probably not. And I would say that
sometimes I feel like, what's the point?
Sean actually says, are there less allowable expenses as a sole trader than a limited? And my argument is no. I don't think there is. I don't think there is really. A limited company and sole trader are usually just, I know they're two different legal entities, and I know there's been people, there's blogs and vlogs out there. People are actually saying this, but I've got a sneaking suspicion, again, this has come from one person, and then everybody else is just replicating that story on their own channel and believing it. It's just replicated all the way throughout. So over all the years, I've not distinguished, because I've been a sole trader for over 30 years. I've been a limited company since I think early 2000s as well, and I've taken the same allowances on both, and Taxman's never bored their backside. And Taxman actually came back to me at one point in time as a sole trader and said, "Do you realise you're entitled to your double glazing as an allowance now, fully writable off?" And I went, "Oh, I didn't realise that." And then they had to give me £1,000 tax back, because that was it just changed that year. They didn't expect you to replace single glazing with single glazing again because they wanted everybody to have double glazing. So they changed the rules to say it's acceptable to change it with double glazing, and it's instantly deductible rather than actually capitalisation, because it was classed as an improvement before. So allowable expenses with HMRC, take it with a pinch of salt sometimes and just double check with your accountant if that's the case. Take photos, probably for claiming expenses and stuff like that. I do take photographs because we have remote accountants, remote bookkeepers.
Yeah, we do that.
Do all our work. So we just take photographs of every receipt that we create, and we actually send it over to them, and they keep it on a file. But I also keep it in a separate file. I just pile them up by month. So all I do with all my receipts and my income receipts, I just take one sheet of paper and I put that's January, and I put all the receipts, everything for January. And when February comes along, I put another sheet of paper and write February, and then put all the stuff in there for February, and then put another sheet of, and then all that's gone into Sage is the one I use. People can use Xero or whatever one they want to use, or QuickBooks, but all that goes into Sage. So then after that, and then stuff goes in from your end into Sage, stuff goes in from the other end, the accountants, the bookkeeper's end, to go into Sage, and we have Sage remote access, so everybody can get access into it to work on the accounts. And we all pull it together, and I just press a button. VAT returns done, accounts are done. In other words, the profit and loss and the balance sheet are printed out, and then I just scan over them to see if there's any anomalies. In other words, is there any significant things which is going to pop up with HMRC when I file the return to say that it's changed dramatically, significantly year on year. In other words, is your repairs and improvements more than 30%? Because it was 30% last year. So of your top line income. So if it's more than 30%, then you'd probably have to make sure you've got a reason why it's more, because that'll flag up and they'll ask that question, because they work on an exception reporting system. In other words, if something's different year on year, then it'll flag up on their report to investigate it. If it's this is a sneaky way to get past HMRC, by the way. If it's not, so there's a hint. Keep your percentages the same every year and use accruals and prepayments to do that. If it's not, then you can do that. Or if you're up at 30% one year and you drop down to 25%, you maybe want to use some accruals and pull some stuff forward from the existing year to put it up to the 30%, load your tax bill, but then you're obviously going to pay more again the next year anyway. But you might be in a year, if you're a sole trader, where you straddle between 40% taxpayer and 20%, or a low rate taxpayer and a high rate taxpayer each year. So if that's the case, then you probably want to make sure you put a lot of accruals, which is justifiable, in your higher rate taxpayer year to bring your high rate tax bill down, and then it falls out into the lower rate taxpayer year where you're still paying low rate tax. So you're minimising your tax liability. Perfectly legal to do that, but I've done it a lot of times in order to do that, using accruals and prepayments to do that, and writing back and writing forward. This is why I tell everybody, before you get to the end of the tax year in April, or the end of your company year and your whatever that you've deemed it to be, just do a forecast in advance, because you know what rents you've got coming in. So basically just add all the rents on, the extra rents that you're going to have coming in every single month, and then add on your costs, which you know you've got your mortgages probably every single month, you've got your management fees every single month, and then put that in, and then work out your bottom line profit to see if it's pushing you over into the higher rate taxpayer if you're a sole trader, and then work out about maybe you should start doing repairs and improvements now. In order to get that down before you hit the next tax year. So this brings your bill down for that existing year well in advance. Don't leave it to the last minute.
Leave it to the last minute, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great way to do it.
That's some it's a really good tax advice here, Jim, and I'm sure that the people listening will be quite happy to hear that kind of advice, because tax can be a bit difficult and not everybody has a real good grasp on it. You should really have a professional assisting you and advising you on that, but obviously it's good to get some good insights. You obviously know your stuff when it comes to tax, Jim, evidently. But yeah, so that's great. Thanks for that.
Remember to use the cost of running your business from home as their allowances for the broadband, which I have. I do that. I do 50-50 with broadband. So company pays 50%, I pay 50%. Electricity, that doesn't work like that. I've not really done that. That's minimal. There's no point. There's no point. It's so minimal. Office space, phone calls, but for smaller landlords, then you can do that. If you're using your car for your tax bill, if you're using for your car, Personally, for me, I think you should use the mileage scheme, which is 45 pence per mile.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a number of miles back and forward to your properties, then you could actually submit that 45 pence per mile as a bill to your company, your limited company, if you want, and get that money out. That's tax free. That's no income. That's just to cover your costs. Or if you're a sole trader, you can submit it as part of your. You don't need to take the money out. You can just leave it as it is for your accounts. But when you submit your tax bill, you add that amount on as a deduction against your profits for your tax purposes, for your taxable profits. So it brings that down as a natural result as well. I mean, our landlord, we've got it on here actually on this post. If you click on that, you can see our landlord tax tips blog here, which goes into much more detail about the landlord tax tips you can get. So why not take a look at that if you've missed any, and you probably missed some of the things that you could actually claim. You'd be amazed. I mean, listen, send one to catch one, okay, is the expression, poacher turn gamekeeper, that sort of thing. That's me. So I understand completely how to use the system in terms of tax deductions and tax minimization because of my past as an accountant and because of my experience and expertise and wisdom over the years that I've accumulated from asking all the right questions of all the right people over the last 30 years as a result of that.
Yeah, and it's the correct way to kind of mitigate your way through that. That it's not tax avoidance before anybody thinks. Do you know what? So like, because like you said, Jim, if you're doing certain things, you're going to then obviously have the tax.
Remember, Richard, hold it. Before we get this, stigma, tax avoidance is perfectly legal. Yes, tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion is illegal. But all of a sudden, the morality of the word tax avoidance in people's minds is like, you can't do that. You should be paying more tax. It's like, wait a minute, I pay more tax than your full-time wage every year. I probably pay 3 or 4 times more tax than your full-time wage every year. And you're telling me that I'm not paying my tax. It's like, what? I'm paying 4 or 5 times more than you are, and than your actual salary is. So I'm probably paying about 60 times more than you're paying every year yourself. And you're telling me I'm not paying enough.
Yeah, that's crazy. But that is the mindset and the way people approach it.
Eat the rich mentality. It's easy to point the finger at the rich and say it's your fault. It's like it's no. And you can see that on the election debates where some of the parties are actually going, we're going to tax the wealthy. I tell you what the wealthy will do. The wealthy will actually go and buy a property in another location like Monaco, and they'll move there and you'll get no tax from then on. Yeah. And then what they'll do is they'll then take all their dividends as well, and they'll get the payments out to a shell company in there, and they'll avoid paying any dividend tax as well. So you're losing all that money as a result of your eat the rich mentality. It's stupidity at its best, and then they lose all these jobs because then they decide, oh, it's actually nice over here, and I can't get down to my work very easily because I can't go back to the UK or I'll be a tax exile. So therefore, I'll relocate all my work and my job over to here where I am right now, and all these people have been displaced and made redundant in the UK. That's the eat the rich mentality. That's what it gets.
Yeah. So and back to obviously landlord profit boosts, and there is a lot of people that probably are not getting the full potential out of their buy to let. And what we've covered today, hopefully, will give people a lot of insights into how to, save a wee bit of money, but obviously not cutting the corners where you're going to be cheap, as we said in the beginning. But there's a lot of ways to do that, and I really liked obviously a lot of good tax tips here, but I really liked your advice, Jim, right from the get-go when you're purchasing the mortgage advice, where you look at the 2 and 5 year deals, where actually the 2-year deal with the higher arrangement fee was better than the 5 year at, say, the 6% at the moment. So that was quite a good tip as well. So it's knowing who to speak to and getting the right advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and as we said there, tax we could talk about all day. We actually have done a whole show. So yeah, the landlord tax tip blog, the link for that's attached in the post for this on this post. So you could click through and have a look at that and watch our show on that as well. And of course, you could always reach out to myself. My contact details are also attached to this post here, so feel free to do that anytime.
And as well, if anybody's got any things that they really want to talk about, if we get the same question in these comments every single time about the same, seeking for the same advice, then we'll certainly do a show on that advice.
Yeah,
we're happy to do that. The more people that say the same thing every single time is like, okay, this is the thing we need to talk about then, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, feedback's so important. And thanks to everybody that's, to Ryan and Sarah and Sean and things who's joined in today on the comments and been watching. And everybody on TikTok and things as well. It's really good to keep it interactive. And if you've got questions, guys, please ask. We'll answer them. And like Jim says, this is a topic.
Right, you've got to get away to Edinburgh. Let's wind it up.
Yeah, I am. I'm just about to wind it up.
Remember now, so, drink responsibly.
I'm not actually drinking this afternoon.
Give me a beer. It's like two hands at once.
No, I'm just going for food and a look around. I've got a birthday party evening. So we'll leave it there, guys. We'll be back next Saturday. Jim, we're doing the Wealth Creation Show on Monday. We are going to look at how to turn your ambition into income. Tune into that at 12:30. But as usual, we'll be back next Saturday, 9:30 as usual. And I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Jim.
Perfect.